Our Totems, Our Sexuality. That is the name of the book that started this particular program. In fact, we'd been doing this on a Friday, if you remember, maybe at a much smaller scale, really, where we'd pick a totem, give you background of it, and then I'll walk you through the temperament, the personality type of the totem. Until I stumbled upon Cosmas Nyamutswa. I found him actually in a heated online discussion that was happening. And it's always interesting to see, we genuinely are curious about our totems. And I remember there was one comment that says, you need to find this book by this writer. It will change the way you see yourself. And they put in the name Cosmas Nyamutswa, Our Totems, Our Sexuality. I'd never heard of this guy, ever. I took a screenshot of that Facebook message, and then I set out with the help of my producer, Melusi, to find Cosmas Nyamutswa. I never told him the story. And we found him. And when we found him, we said, listen, we need to have an understanding, have a conversation around your books and the themes and the things that you're talking about. And I think this journey has since evolved way beyond just his book, but rather a new awakening of ourselves to our heritage. And Cosmos makes the time to be here every single Thursday. And in fact, I'll also tell you this. We have long, extensive off-air conversations in our day-to-day lives, looking to understand our African narrative a little bit better, away from some of the narratives that you and I have been fed. And for the most part, we've gladly accepted them. Accepted them because we don't have any other reference point to challenge those narratives. How, for the most part, most people are happy to imagine that Lobengula liked the taste of sugar so much that it was enough for him to give off his land. So much that it was enough for us to accept that a whole king would move in pursuit of salt. That the salt really could come to a king. And some of these things are things we've held on. And something else that's become alive to me is the idea of the communication we've seen on rocks, which we have loosely and blindly, even ignorantly, called Bushman paintings. And yet, that communication, just like we found with hieroglyphics in Egypt, tongue twister, that communication says a lot. But unfortunately, for most part, majority of us cannot interpret what was meant in that communication. We've just accepted that, our ancestors were happy to paint rocks, and that's it. And we've lost our heritage in that. When we look at our architecture, the stonework, we've seen the remnants of how perfectly carved those stones were to make brick shapes. What were they using? How did they do that, and why? These are still mysteries we have never been fully able to unravel. And that's what makes this show quite exciting. Cosmos, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Manjenjenji.
Having you here is always nerve-wracking because I'm sitting here at the edge of my seat, learning, hearing and absorbing. And I know most of our time the listener also is engaged, asking more questions. Others are completely refusing maybe to hear or to accept that what we've been told for the longest time might not be the ultimate truth or the final truth. You've been teaching us about the phallic symbol. If we look at our national airport, our international airport, the main one, when we look at our ruins, when we look at the Zimbabwean bird and what it may possibly mean, it's a lot for us to take in.
It is a lot. When you look at Mitupo yedu, mwana mukomana akura achinzi maita soko mamukase soko ari mwana mukomana. Now kuti tizomuudza ave an adult iye zvino ave munhu mukuru chaizvo kuti iwe haunzi soko iwe unonzi vhudzi chena. It's not easy for people to take that, but that's unfortunately what we have to look at. We have to tell the correct position nemitupo yedu. And today tikuda kuti nyatsotsanangura iyo mitupo iyoyi. We want to understand kuti mutupo chi. We want to understand its purpose. We want to understand its relationship ne Christianity and marriages. Those are the things we are going to look at today.
All right, so let's dive right into it. You gave a classic example there about some of the misunderstandings that are around our understanding of our totems. Nekuzozvirudunura apa nonetsa makapedza kudunura juzimi uchizoda kuzorukazve neshinda yavashandisayo anenge ari ma1 chaiwo. So talk to us today. Let's get right into it. Where are we starting?
Let's look at the definition of the word mutupo. Mutupo is kuti mutupo rinorevei kwatiri. Mutupo, remember, ndisu tega vanhu vatema tinawo. Havana mutupo ku Western world. Mutupo watinawo isu is our identity.
Right.
It's not just my identity alone. It is the identity of a group of people with blood which is like mine. Takabva kune one common ancestor, poita vana vakawanda vese ivavo vanenge vane mutupo umwe chete. That's our identity, originating from a common, a paternal ancestor. Ndo mutupo. That's our identity. It's an identity which is actually very important because the same identity is used in many other things. Unoshandiswa identity iyoyo inoshandiswa pakutenda, kuti titendane isu vemhuri. Kana kuti vari kunze kwemhuri iyoyo vanokwanisa kutitenda isu ne-identity yedu, nemutupo wedu. We praise each other ne-identity iyoyo, nemutupo iwoyo. We show appreciation of one another nemutupo ne-identity iyoyo. We prevent those cases that are potentially incestuous ne-identity. In other words, atizorora ma-cousins edu, atirore hanzvadzi dzedu by the help yemutupo. So it becomes a very important a point my traditions edu isu vanhu vatema. Mutupo zvakare unoshandiswa se-title yemunhukadzi. Munhurume haanzi soko. Soko is name of a title. Shava, ngara, shonga, chirandu, zenda, ngonya, gumbi, mazita emitupo iwayo. These are titles of a woman. Mamuka sei zenda, mamuka sei newa, mamuka sei bonga. These are titles of a woman. You don't use these titles on a man. Zitare mutupo arishedzwe as a title kumunhurume. This is very important to understand. Vanhurume vane ma-titles avo vega. Tichazoita program, a different program, tichidiscuss ma-titles evanhurume.
Yeah. As you were just explaining there, you know, the purpose and the foundation of totems mutupo, kuti vanhu vasazororana yanga iri zhira yekuziva kuti ndo hama ndo pane ukama, nokuti kare vanhu vangosama ma-first name nema-surname name.
Ndizvozvo.
Vaive nei?
Munhu aingopiwa zita rekuti nyamutswa, ndo ratova zita rake iroro. Hapana first name, hapana what you identify as a surname. It is just one name. So my brothers could have 4 different names. 4 brothers would have 4 different names. Vana vavo vanokupiwazve just the one name, and that's it. Now, kuti vana ava vazive kuti uyu i-cousin yangu, zvaitonetsazve. But ndo paishanda mutupo ipapo. kana mutupo wake anzi iwesa totoziva kuti that's my relative. I cannot marry in this family.
Yeah. So this is, I kind of dispute that. Maybe not dispute. I am doubtful of that. The fact that our ancestors, in all their wisdom and their prowess, had no other mechanism to identify mwana wa Cosmas. Mwana wa tetitadzidza ndiwaningi outside. So is it not possible that that way might just have been lost and undone by just the system we now recognize, which is your first name and your last name, versus there not having had been any way at all where our relatives would be able to tell Cosmas, imba yekwana Cosmas?
Iye zvinotiri kupinda muChristmas. Mhuri dzinoungana, and the same applied even kudhara kuya. The families would come together to gather for certain functions. And ndoma functions, ndoma gatherings ekuti vanhu vainyatsozivana kuti uyu mwana wa baba mukuru ningi. Kunze kweizvozvo.
But they didn't have Christmas there.
No, vaive nemafunctions avo avaiita izvozvo. Pairohwa guwa, and panorohwa guwa, everybody must come. Panoita rufu, everybody must come. Panoroorwa mwana mumba, everybody must be there. Not zvatakuita izvino zvokuti takuenda nemafriends kunoroora, kwete. Haisiri tsika yedu iyoyo. Tsika yedu, it is the family that is involved. These are two families that are coming together. Haisiri opportunity yekuti mafriends anogona kuuyawo mumba menyu. Ndezve mafamilies. So those were important family gatherings. Ekuti even today we know kuti ukanzi kuri kurohwa guwa kumusha, everybody, every member of the family has got to go there. We are taking it kubva kudhara ikoko. It was a requirement. So pavaiungana ipapo ndo pavaiziva kuti this one is my sister, this one, and so on. Now without if a member went to live very far away and oita vana vake vari ikoko, is no longer mixing with the original family, vana vanogona kuroorana dai pasina mutupo. But even if that happens, mutupo ndo unotigaida, unotiudza kuti uyu ari kunzi wesa uyu, this is my sister. Wherever kana atongonzi wesa kwatiri isu, we know kuti this is my sister. And the same applies kuna anashava. Vanashava vakadivided into so many groups. They are dotted all over the country. But kana angonzi mutupo wake ishava, we must know kuti this is a sister of that other shava. Atidi kuteedza tsika yokuti takuti ishava yekwakati uyu ishava yekwakati saka ngavaroorane. No, haisiri tsika yedu iyoyo. We don't want to follow that kind of system.
Right. Okay. All right. Hi. All right. Okay, so you've just outlined the purpose of totems. You said it was to show appreciation. It was also to prevent weakening the bloodline by marrying your family. You also said, and for me, and I quite agree with this, pandinonzi madhure, pandinonzi chivara, and ndiri mwana wadhagi, dhagi unopota chiti chivara wamukase, chivara ita so. It feels so much more more than being called Miss.
It is actually a lot more powerful than being addressed as madam.
Yes.
It's a lot more powerful. It means a lot more to you. Yes, he is addressing you, but he is also identifying you with the entire clan. He is identifying you with all your ancestors before you. That's very powerful.
That is powerful. And what is madam? What is sir? It's an empty word. It's like calling you girl or boy, actually.
This is what you call everybody else.
That's it.
But this one is specific
Right,
to your
what do
family.
they?
It's specific to your ancestors, which is beautiful. Yeah. It's a lot more powerful than madam.
I love that. So totems and marriages. Let's talk a little bit about that.
When we have said that one purpose Mitupo is to prevent incest. Brother is not going to marry sister.
Right.
But hoyo abba ona sister wake akanaka zvokuti.
I'm just sparked with the fact that you said hoyo.
Yeah. abba afunga kuti awe handimuregedze uyu.
Naye.
The sister wangu zvangu, but I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to marry this one. Wobva varoorana. Now, chivanhu chedu chinotaura icho kuti you can end up with a fruitless marriage. You can end up with disabled children. Vana vasina kukwana mupfungwa, vana vasina kukwana physically. Munhu akangoita ndonda asina kusimba. And vana ivavo, they can have inappropriate sexual preferences.
What do you mean?
Anogona kuti ari mukomana anodanana nemumwe mukomana.
Oh dear.
Ari musikana anodanana nemumwe musikana. Those things come from this kind of marriage. And this marriage yamaita yakumanikidzira iya, it will cause you a lot of suffering, a lot of unrest. Ndo zvinoitika nekuroora hanzvadzi. Zvine ma-problems.
Wow. Mati, it can cause, how did you describe this?
It can cause a lot of unrest and suffering.
And inappropriate
sexual preferences.
Wow.
Yes.
So tomboti zvaitika mumusha and dzimwe nguva tunoita musingazivi zvogadziriswa sei much. So let's start say with you know, difficulty with your children, mental, physical challenges. Zvinogadzirika here izvo. Even izvozvo inappropriate
matova nedambudziko
suffering
mumusha.
and unrest.
Even if you are able to put together a lot of money nebasa renyu, but this problem here will cause you a lot of suffering. You are not going to be very happy people. Kana waita ma-problems akaita seiwa kuvana.
Yeah. Saka munoita sei zvatoitika kai zvinodii?
Ningi, what has happened, something zvandine experience nazvo. Vakaonana vasikana muHarare, musikana nemukomana ndokubva vadanana vari veMitupo wewesa. I've got a first-hand information on that. Vadanana ndokubva vaita mwana vari muHarare. Ndokubva vazoenda kumusha kuti vanointroducana vakuda kuroorana. Vasvika kumusha, vakuru ndokubva vaona kuti mukomana aiwesa, musikana aiwesa. Asi vatova nemwana. Now, that became a big discussion between the two families. The two families agreed kuti ngavasiyane.
Oh no.
Yes. And mwana wacho yeye ari muno muHarare. But vana baba namai vakasiyana. This was a big statement. It was not just to talk to these two people alone. The community knows about it. The community knows kuti izvo hazviitwe izvi.
Asika tosiwa kakuti tsvakai ng'ombe chena muedze kuyananisa. Inobva mavarambanisa vanhu zvatoitika kazvipota nomwana. Vatobatana kare.
The message, in my opinion, was louder nokuti vasiyane. Rather than to formalize that union, nokuti ndabvise mombe chena, mombe yeukama. It is important to put a message to the community. Because kana mati taakubvisa mombe yeukama, is not going to change the situation yekuti ihama nehama dzaroorana, hama zinonyatsozivikanwa kuti idzi hama idzi dziri kuroorana. So to me, I would have gone for what they decided, that ngavasiyane. The message was very loud.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey. We've just broken up a home here.
And unfortunately, it has to happen. You know, tikaenda kuchimani uko, we've got very sad stories. Ndo kunana moyo vakawanda. And you find kuti moyo is marrying another moyo. Right? They may not get these problems years, you know, between the two of them per marriage yao. But vana vavo vakazoroorana futi vari vana moyo, chances are very high.
Ko zvatinoona todzoka isusu vana madhuve takadzidzwa pachirongwa chedu chinoti takatanga tiri vanaumba makombe kwamutasi tibva tachinja mutupo. Hazvigoni here kuti vanhu vanenge vaita izvi vachingoti aiwa iwe chiramba uri umba makombe iwe chitora tembo, nekuti ukazvifungisisa tichitongori vanaumba makombe. It's still our bloodline.
Ndizvozvo, that's your bloodline. But what happens is they bank on the fact yekuti maka break away from the umba makombe in 1494. You have had marriages akawanda nemamwe groupings. So
we've diluted that.
The blood is diluted. So it's not, you are not exactly the same people na umba makombe. Saka they take it kuti marriages between the two families now ye umba makombe na tembo ya kwanisa kuita.
It's 25 minutes before we get to the top of the hour. Totem Pride, we are just understanding a little bit more deeply about our totems like we do every single Thursday morning between 10 and 11. Good morning to you, 2687. Indinoera moyo vana baba vedu nezvanzi dzedu vachidedzwa kunzi vana sinyoro. Aha, muzukuruka. Sinyoro muzukuru. Pane mubvunzo wangu asi vanasikana pane bvunzo wangu. Isu vanasikana todamwa kunzi vana moyo, vana mamoyo kana kuti chinjanja. Is this correct? Paye pamakati mutupo wedu chaiwo ing'ombe ndibatsireiwo. So the first port of call is vazukuru ava, or at least their ancestor akavaita kuti vazonzi vana sinyoro aive muzukuru.
Ndizvozvo. Vana sinyoro vazukuru, and that is further confirmed apart from the fact yekuti we know about the Portuguese guy akaita vana ne a local person. The further confirmation ndeyekuti vana vavo vane title yavo vega. Haifanani title yavanoshandisa haifanani nevamwe vana moyo. Vanasikana vavo vanonzi vana chinjanja. That's the word we're looking for last week.
Right, and she gave it to us.
Yes. Yes. Vanonzi vana chinjanja vanasikana vavo. Kana vanasikana vane title yakasiyana ne imwe moyo yese, that's a pointer yekuti vazukuru.
Right, so in other words,
yes,
it is likely that her father or her father's father akazvagwa musha vaira moyo, muka vachiera iri ng'ombe, vachibva vanzi sinyoro nokuti ave muzukuru akazvagwa musha. Inini safo lake ndoita mwana wozvagwa musha wadhaki. Mwana iye mutupo waanotora unenge wakafanana newekuti sinyoro, nokuti wazvagwa musha, haana kuzvagwa musha kwababa vake, achengetwa pamba padhaki. Mutupo iwowu sinyoro mutupo wemuzukuru wevaera moyo vakanga vazvagwa pamusha. So maybe if you take the time 2687 and trace your bloodline, you may find that somewhere along the lines you've got an ancestor. It could be your dad, your dad's dad, your dad's dad's dad, akazvagwa pamusha pana moyo asina kuenda kumusha kwake, ndivo vakazonzwa nasinyoro.
Ndizvozvo chaizvo. When we look at it, they say a Portuguese guy akaita vana nemunhu wechishona. Aita vana ivavo, vana needed mutupo.
Right.
and Mitupo waifanira kutora ndewababa.
But in Portuguese.
But in Portuguese haana Mitupo. So what they did was vakapa Mitupo vana sekuru kwakabva mai. Mai anga akabva kumoyo. Asi vakabva vapiwa chidawo chavo vega chisina kufanana nevamwe vana moyo vese vana sekuru. Vakapiwa chidawo chekuti signor. Vane chidawo ichochi. It means vamwe vese vakazozvarwa vachibva this one family. Vakanga vari vana signor. That's the case yana signor.
Okay, so I hope that has answered your question about the meaning of that. And interestingly, signoro also sounds like a typical Portuguese word. I'm thinking a señorita. I know there's Spanish señorita, but it's also there in Portuguese as well.
Yeah, that's right. In Portuguese, senhor is a title of a man. Ari mukadzi anonzi signora. So uyu akanzi signor because they were talking about the man. Ndo pakabva izwi kuti signor.
This is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So I hope your question has been answered. 2687. Okay, I'm not sure what your message is trying to say there. All right, so now another hot potato which most Africans find burning their hands, Chiwambu, is the intersection between religion and truly being African. And one of the key things that makes us Africans, Zimbabweans in particular, is our connection to our totems. Musaka machitofuza Mitupo wako ndiani tikutende. Havabvunzi kuti chechi yako ndeipi tikutende tichikuti waita mukatolike or whatever, because we understand this. But also, interestingly, there are many people who, once they became religiously affiliated, found the need to remove themselves with the true connection of their totems.
Vakawanda, and they say so much about our own beliefs in terms of spirituality. Ours is not a religion. Ours is spirituality. Religion has got a book that we refer to. And the way you need to run your life. That's a religion. Spirituality haina book. Muchizvarwa munongokura muchiziva spirituality yenyu. You are not going to say ko paya rega ndidzoke kubhuku riya rinotarisa kuti rinoti chii on this point. That's spirituality haina book. Isu chitendero chedu chevanhu vatema ndeche spirituality. It's not a religion. Now, then came a conflict. Vauya muno varungu. Vationa tine spirituality yedu. Ivo vauya ne religion yavo ye Christianity. Vamwe vachitaura Islam. Now, vakaona kuti paita competition panapa. Spirituality was very powerful, and vaive ne Christianity yao, they felt very threatened. So what did they plot to do to deal with spirituality? Vakazama kui shibisa spirituality. And vakaita kunyanya kwekutanga, but unfortunately vanhu vakazosimudzira nyaya iyi sezviya zveguruswa zvekuti vanhu vatema ndo vakazosimudzira theory yeguruswa. Yakazosimudzirwa manje nevanhu vatema. Ndo vakutaura kuti ndovakumanya nazvo ndovakuya vachiti Christianity vachiti spirituality is a generational curse. Mweya wechina and so many descriptions they give to our original spirituality.
Right.
But vanoti mweya wechina, mweya wemadzinza, vari kutukirira ma-ancestors edu. Isu vanhu vatema. Ndisi tine ma-ancestors anogona kutukirirwa. I'm not sure whether that is correct at all. But whenever you say, whenever anybody says kuti mweya wechina, ndati okay kuti is we are going to die. Iye kuti mweya wechina iwoyo is going to die. And in a short time he is going to be an ancestor.
Right.
Anenge akunziwo naye mweya wechina anofara nazvo here.
And interesting you put it like that. I'm just thinking the same way we have denounced our ancestors is exactly the same way you will be denounced by your own bloodline.
You'll be denounced by your own bloodline. Is it making sense to you? Are you ever going to be proud of any such scenario? We need to protect ourselves. Tiri vanhu vatema. We need to protect my traditions, my practices.
That's the voice of Cosmas Nyamutswa. Pano pachirongwa tinovadana tichivati chiwambu nechidavo chavo. Tiri kungotarisa zvimwe zvezvinhu zvatinogona takasarira kana kusirira maererano nekurwisa nyaya dzemitupo, why they're important, the purposes, and looking at how even religion comes in to, intercept our understanding and interpretation of what totems are. And we appreciate your questions that you're sending in. We will continue in a second. I'm also quite excited about the fun day that's happening. Have you heard about it?
Get ready for an unforgettable, fun-filled Christmas. It's the Christmas Family Fun Day, brought to you by Capital 100.4 FM in association with the all-new Graceland Waters Resort at Lake Tivero on December 23. Come through and meet your favorite Capital presenters and enjoy loads of fun, thrilling activities at Graceland Waters Resort, including zip-lining, quad biking, boat cruising, and for the kids, jumping castles, mini quad bikes, trampolines, and more. Admission is $5 for adults and $3 for children from 3 to 12 years of age. Make your booking now at Graceland Waters Resort. Call 0784-893-009 and 0772-391-339 or log on to at Graceland_Waters_Resort on Instagram for more information. The Family Christmas Fun Day, for Christmas to remember. Christmas on Capital 100.4 FM, Harare's Heartbeat.
Get your brand noticed among the best brands in Zimbabwe on the biggest television platform, ZTN Prime DSTV channel 294, with over 7 million viewers. Place your adverts from today and get 5 free slots to boost your brand this festive season. It is a time to give, and at ZTN we're offering you these free slots. To advertise, call Rumbinderere on 0771 519 217 or Shingika Nongo on 0777 89201. ZTN Prime, get the picture.
Watch Village Court on ZTN Prime on Mondays at 7:30 p.m. as we tour Zimbabwe's villages and chiefs preside over cases in their courts. ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294.
This is the Christmas story as told by Capital.
So it's 12 minutes before we get to 11 o'clock. We're almost at the end of our show. I wanted to ask, as a believer, as a Christian, or even as a Muslim, whatever religious background you are of, do you think totems have a place in your faith? Do you think totems have a place in your religion? Is there something wrong with you having a clear understanding of your totems as far as your faith is concerned. 0719 But also interesting, Ichimambo, I'm just thinking, even when I look at the Bible in itself, there are also many inferences of animals to people, and I find that curious. One that is also at the top of my mind right now, before we even have you go through your list, the idea of how powerful the eagle is in as far as the Christian faith is concerned. How sometimes we're even likened to an eagle in terms of how it flies, how it carries its children, its foresight, the dimension that it operates in. One that is always curious of me, and we sing hymns even to this effect of the Lion of Judah, for example.
It is actually wonderful if we look at our lives at a particular group of people, and we liken that group to an eagle. For all the beautiful things that we see in an eagle, we are seeing all that beauty in this particular group of people. It is wonderful, but unfortunately, just a few churches in our country, only a few, just a handful, they say if you liken somebody to an animal, they are going to behave like that animal. Anzi vesoko mukavati soko muchivapembedza kuti muka yavo igudo, vanopedzisira vakuba zvinoita gudo. But they have not zeroed onto the blessings of Jacob's children. Isaka, akanzi, is linked to a donkey, but they've not told us that he has ever bred. No. Judah, the lion of Judah, ndio Mitupo Yahweh, he never devoured anyone. Dan, linked to a snake. Joseph, linked to a wild horse. Benjamin, linked to a wolf. Havana kumboita tsika dzakaipa dzinoitwa nemhuka idzodzi. So we cannot say kuti vana soko, vanhu vanoera mutupo wesoko vachaba segudo. It's totally misplaced.
It's totally misplaced, but also interesting that you bring this up. We also normally give you the personality type of what that animal is like, and often it's in the positive light so that you can see yourself and say, actually, and often most of the time when we give the temperament of each animal, 9 out of 10 times we're on the mark. People say, yeah, actually, that's what my husband is like. Oh yeah, that's myself. So it's not just the negative things, it's also the beauty that some of these animals are. Wananzo, for example, are slow and steady in life. They are not easily deceived by things. They have clear vision. They see far. They observe everything that's happening around them. But now good, they are the life of the party. Vakangosvika chete vana soko maakutopfipfinyika maakutobhebhereka zvakunakidza.
Vana soko are known to be witty. This is what we described the other day when you talked about the soko people. But those who want to give a bad name to spirituality, they don't want to look at the positive aspects. Vanongoda kutarisa at the negative. But also one thing they need to be reminded of. Let's go back in history, 1750, time a Renaissance. If anybody came up with an ideology that differed from what another group had, they would simply get killed. So many people got killed in Europe. 10 million people were killed because of Christianity, and they were killed by other Christians. They want to ignore that.
They want to ignore that. So I just want us to hone in on some of the thoughts that have come in from our listeners. Okay, all right. Let me start with, okay, actually there are quite a few of them. So guys, proud to be called by my totem, hashtag Mija Mija Mamuka say makadini misha sisi vangu vakaroorwa kunana misha asi vana hongwe saka muri murume makadii
mizha ifamily yedu zvakare
vari kwenyu
vakabuda muvaremba. That's part of us. Now you see how totems connect us.
Yes. In that one, murume.
It's wonderful.
Yes,
you see that?
Yes. I know that sounds terrible to say, but that one.
Well, we say that that's what we say.
That one murume wang. Good morning to you, 0726. Good discussions from the flying captain. I follow these issues and even inbox. Oh, answer, but on Signoro, am I correct to say Mitupo ime ine chirungu? It sounds a lot like the Portuguese, Spanish version of senora, signore, signorita.
Right.
Yeah. So I think he's confirming that.
Yeah. And this also, it's a word rakashandiswa nevanhu vatema to make it a totem, so it becomes our word.
Got you.
Yes, we're describing a Portuguese guy, but it is our term.
Yeah, and you know, language is also built that way. Even Chikaranga Prazi actually came from Portuguese.
Yes.
Good morning to you, listening to your well-researched program. Can the facilitator Vachuvambu shed more light on why Iswana Mofu end up Jawana? Intermarriages while being of the same totems. Why we end up in Jawama? In other words, why do they end up in incestual? Well, we know the reputation Yana Mofu. Does this need any further clarification? We all know Biriyenyu and Mofu. Surely.
But ngavaregedze tsika dzakadaro because dzinogona kufamba zvakanaka mumhuri yavo, but they may be setting a bomb for their own children.
Got you. This one, I think we can't answer this one today for two reasons. One, we've answered it, but I think we need to give this one more time in the future. Mangwana Nime, you shed more light on Shumba Samaita, but don't even respond to this one today because we have in the past. But I think we need to go through this one a lot because as long as we're going to talk about Samaita, this one always comes up. And for most people, they're not convinced. I think those are more Ratzakapana. But here's an interesting audio note that's come in from 5492. Good morning.
Nakanaka vadare nditambiriwo muchivara chenyu nhau munotaura yemitupo inhau yakakosha zvikuru inhau inoita kuti tizive kwatakabva madzinza edu takabva nekupi uyewo mukuziva dzinza rako unoziva zvakanaka nedzimwe nguva zvakaipa zviri associated nedzinza iroro zvokubetsera kuita macorrections kugadzirisa upenyu hwako kurarama uchienda mberi. Saka nokudaro zvinhu zvakatikoshera zvikuru kunyangwewo nyaya iyo yekuwanana iyaya inyaya inokoshesawo mitupo. Unogona kuti mutupo hauna kukosha asi wowanana nehanzvadzi yako chaiyo zvinounza matambudziko mukati mekurarama kwako uchiziva kana usingazivi. Saka zvinhu izvozvo zvakakosha toti nyangwe mukati mebhaibheri chaimo vanotaura nenyaya yemadzinza iya inonzi the genealogy of Christ. Mwana wanhingirikiri akabva kupi akaenda kupi, akazozvara ani, akazozvara ani, akazozvara nhingi ndiye akazovawo baba vaJesu. Saka izvozvo zvinobetseredza zvakare kunyangwe mukugarisana kwedu kuti ndizive kuti rudzi rwangu rwakambobva nekupi uye runoenda nekupi. Ndatenda.
Thank you so much for that. And he gives a perfect example. In fact, when you were talking, that's what I was thinking in my mind. When you see the genealogy of David all the way until Jesus, and there is no shadow of doubt, and we've all accepted that writing, that family tree as is. And I think, as others would say, totems is, I don't like the word African science, because then it's a science. That's our science in terms of connecting our lineage and our bloodline. The same way the genealogy is listed in the Bible.
This was the chaizvo. We want kuti isu sevanhu vatema. We need to show that we love our skin. The white man is not going to come back to tell us to love ourselves. It's really up to us. Kana kuti tiri pamberi taita opportunity yekuti tamira pamberi pe congregation and we are now lambasting chivanhu chedu. We are not doing ourselves a favor.
Right.
Yeah.
Only because of time, we're going to have to leave it here. But thank you again, Chamba, for coming in and for always helping us understand ourselves better and seeing, ourselves in a clearer lens, which is an African perspective. Iyashumba samaitai, dakuzobatwa asikwa nasa shabviri time yedu haichatenderi asi iyo iyashumba samaita inyaya iyoyoyo chiwambo muchatomboramba muchitsinidzira zvokwadi kuti tipabatisise papa, but we have to leave it there for today.
Ngatitei program yeshumba samaita.
Tichaitazve chirongwa cheshumba toita vhiki rinouya ino.
Ngatitei vhiki rinouya.
Okay, so there you have it, 5444 chipukuta musodzi wako mukutocheregedza. Next week tiri kutaura nazvine zvana shumba samaita. Happy holidays. We'll catch up again on the segment next week.